Absolutely. And, you know, the big thing with LED lighting is the temperature. And so if you're running anywhere from 2,500 Kelvin all the way up to 5,000 Kelvin, you're going from a yellow spectrum more to a pure white full spectrum. We're probably going to be somewhere in that 3,500 neighborhood. Currently, the combination, we've even got some low pressure sodium still out on the out in the lamps in the parking lot. And those are almost orange. And so we've got orange and yellow. And so we will be bringing that more to a natural color of the 3,500 Kelvin. The other thing too is we do want to illuminate the pavement to be about 2.5-foot candles away from at about 30 feet away from each light pole. But we don't want to light it up like a gulag. We want to make sure that the parking lot is very tastefully illuminated. And the beauty of the LED fixtures now is you can get a very, very sharp and clear cutoff. And so we can illuminate within the confines of our parking lot and literally on the other side of the property line, not have a single light leak. And so we're really looking to elevate that lighting, but at the same time, not make it look like a, with the 100-foot poles and make it look like an unsafe place or a mall parking lot or something like that. We want it to be a very tastefully done, reasonably low-level poles. I think we're talking about putting the light fixtures at about 24 feet off of the pavement, sort of floating there. But between the trees and the quality of the light, we should have a nice, warm-looking, illuminated parking lot.
And how did you settle on the 3,500 Kelvin? Because my understanding is that many municipalities are settling more around 3,000 Kelvin. Because the high pressure sodiums are around, what are they, around 2,400 Kelvin?
Yes, but they're not full spectrum. But no, you're right. We probably would go to 3,000. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Other question, Commissioner Uditsky.
Yes, thank you, Chair Rose. I want to talk a little bit or understand a little bit better the anticipated circulation on the parking lot. So it's obviously a very large parking lot, right? And currently, as people are flowing out of there, they would go both out south onto Alexander, out onto Myrtle, but also north as well. So are you anticipating, it seems obvious to me that, on the very northeast side, right, they'll come north and exit and then come west and around the stadium there onto Park. But what are you anticipating? I guess it's really in the middle, but more west in the parking lot. Are you anticipating they'll go up through that Mill Theater parking lot also to exit onto Park?
Yes. And that was actually one of the epiphanies that we discovered in the plan as we were trying to figure out how to add these bays into the parking lot and get it so that, we had all these little disparate parts of parking, just sort of fragments. And this plan allowed us really to tie it all together so that a student looking for a place to park stayed within that parking lot and was actually able then to drive between the Park Avenue parking lot and the Alexander parking lot without getting back out onto Walter Street, Alexander, or Myrtle. One thing that's very important as well is that the current Walter Street entrance into the proposed Alexander expansion would be a one-way in, because on Walter Street would be two-way until you got to the parking lot. Once you get to the parking lot, you have a choice. Either I'm a bus or I'm dropping off athletes at the gym. In that case, I take a right and swing back behind the gym, or I'm going into the parking lot. So I stay to the left and go into that parking lot. But we do have houses along Walter Street that are going to need to enter and exit driveways there. So we're going to have a little bit of yellow striping and things like that on the former Walter Street alignment to direct that traffic flow. But the other thing too, as you observed, is really allowing as many diffusing points as we possibly can in the Alexander lot. So people don't stack up within the parking lot trying to get out. We're able to get them out onto Myrtle, Alexander at 2 points, back through the Mill Street, the Mill Theater, Park Avenue parking lot, and empty the parking lot reasonably effectively.
Great. Thank you very much for the explanation. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner McCoy, did you have another question? Or no?
Well, I did.
Your hand was up, yes.
Okay, this is just has the college ever considered building a leveled parking deck rather than a complete all-surface parking deck?
That's a good point. Here, go, Kurt.
So we did have a multi-level parking deck in our 2007 master plan. Obviously, that plan was put together at a time when we had all-time high enrollments in higher ed and before the Great Recession, things like that. And so your master plans from that time for most higher ed institutions were fairly lofty and aspirational, as was ours. In that plan, we also had us moving the football field and doing quite a few other things at the campus. We felt this master plan was a little more practical and a little more executable on a shorter time frame and made more sense for us. The concern we have with a multi-level parking lot is, number one, they're very expensive. Number two, a lot of maintenance and things like that. And, just we feel it's a more attractive look for our campus to not invest in that multi-level parking. Would much rather, if we were going to do that, it'd be on the north end by the railroad tracks. And I think that's an opportunity for us to advertise not only to the city of Elmhurst, but also the trains going by, a more aesthetically pleasing Elmhurst College than we would have with a parking garage.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Burns, did you have a question?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, question, it looks like Elmhurst College owns all of the land from Myrtle to Prospect and Alexander to Park, except for 136 Prospect, which is the house on just north of Alexander on the west side of Prospect. So are the remaining houses eventually, I assume if there's people living there, are they on life estates? Or I guess my main question is, eventually, is there going to be some other use for this land east of the current parking lot going over to Prospect?
So there are two houses in that area you're talking about that we currently do not own. 136 Prospect is one. I believe 227 Alexander is the other one. It's a little red brick house. We don't own either of those properties. Obviously, long term, if they become available and we're able to make a deal, we would probably look to acquire those. Right now, we don't have any plans for that because, again, we don't own that property. But in our master plan, we do call for very long term, way down the road. If we were to able to acquire those properties, there's anything from a performing arts center to some other large venue like that could go on that spot. But again, we're talking probably at least 20, 30 years down the road. We're not in any position to do that right now. Even if we own that land today, we wouldn't be able to execute on that. We're not ready for that project right now.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question from another commissioner? What? Commissioner Pittman?
Thanks, Chair Rose. I have just a quick question about Walter Street. Thanks for clarifying that it was going to be both ways up until the gymnasium there. That section I've driven many times, dropping my kids off to basketball, and it always kind of jams up there because of those parking spaces that are in front of those houses. And given the turning radius there coming out of the parking lot, are you going to continue to let cars park there, or have you talked to the city about limiting car parking there just to make sure traffic flow on that street?
So we haven't approached the city about limiting any parking anywhere near us right now, just because we're so desperate for parking. Hence that's why we're here. If long term, if if this addition is adequate for us and we could afford to give that parking back on the street there, I'm sure we'd be open to doing that. But I don't think we really consider it as part of this, just because we're not accustomed to being in a position where we can give parking back easily.
Okay. It just seems like with that stop sign there and potentially, like you said, buses coming out there, and like I said, even right now that area is very narrow. I don't know, maybe it's just a matter of keeping 2 car lengths on that side of the street open so that people can more easily navigate that area. Just a suggestion.
Or more distance between that stop sign and where parking begins, we'd certainly be open to that. We just I know the one house a little closer to the lot, we have students that live there, and typically there's not enough driveway space for all students to park, that live there to park in that driveway. So having a couple on street is helpful for those students.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other commissioner? Commissioner McCoy?
Thank you, Chair Rose. Does the city of Elmhurst, have they turned over Walter Street to the college, the entire street? So if
Yes.
that was the case, then you would be in charge of the parking on that street.
Correct.
Correct. So you could eventually say there's no parking on Walter.
We could, yeah. We'd want to do that in concert with the city. We want, we certainly don't want to make any decisions like that could impact like the public library and others that are nearby us that utilize parking there as well. So we certainly could. We would want to do that in consultation with the city, make sure we're doing the right thing for everybody.
I was just, Commissioner Pittman, when she asked the question about that street, and I live close by there, and that street it's very crowded with all the parking, the cars there, and the people park there, and they go across the street to the library. But it would seem that street would be much safer if there was no parking on that street, and it was just an access road to get to the parking lot and the other side of the physical education facility.
Yeah, we're certainly open to looking at that. If the city feels that would be in the community's best interest, we can certainly explore that.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner have a question before I see if there's any public comment? Okay. Commissioner McCoy asked my question, which is really about the multi-level parking deck. I'm certainly sympathetic with this. I work at a university, and I know what it's like. Students just circling, and we certainly faced that with York High School as well a number of years ago. So I'm sympathetic with that. So I'm going to ask about the public comment. Eileen, there is someone who wishes to comment publicly on this.
I believe we do have a gentleman in the public comment room. Mike is.
Mike, do we have someone who wishes to make public comment? Yes, we do. Great.
Good. He also was sworn in when the applicant swore in. He stood up and raised his right hand also.
Thank you for confirming that. So please go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Hello, my name is Joe Vasicki. I live at 345 Elm Park and Gray Street. And I walk through Elmhurst College daily when we don't have COVID-19. I go to the commuter station, and I walk across the parking lot and come through the quad. I would like to thank Commissioner Snyder for her comment. about the lighting. That was good. Thank you. I'd say that Elmhurst College is a good neighbor to us. We like Elmhurst College, and it's beautiful. And my concern is that it stays that way, because it's such a good asset for our neighborhood. And I appreciate Mike taking the time to show me some of the plans that you have. I have just three quick points. They deal with green, safety, and access. Number one is I'm glad about the trees that are being planted, because the more trees we have, it certainly is a good buffer. I understood from Mike that there were going to be trees actually also within the parking lot, which I think is a new asset, and that's good. Safety, I was a little bit concerned about access to Faginal Hall, so that if there was any sort of a medical emergency at the physical education center or at the theater, that emergency vehicles would be able to get in from Prospect to those facilities. From what Mike said earlier this evening, I understand that this Walter will still be open from Prospect on the east to the gymnasium, which I think is good. The other point that I wanted to mention is that as a neighbor and as somebody that walks through the campus regularly, I run into parents that are dropping off their children, students at the physical education center. And as you might not be surprised, a lot of them are late and they're kind of panicking to get directions to Faginal Hall. So please keep in mind that sometimes it is difficult the way that traffic patterns are configured around the campus for parents that are in kind of late or in an emergency trying to get their kids to the physical fitness or the Faginal Hall facility. Other than that, thank you very much for this opportunity. I appreciate the time that you're all spending and giving consideration to this. And thanks to Elmhurst College for keeping up the good work and being a good neighbor. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask if the applicant would like to respond to those comments at all.
I'd just like to say thank you for the feedback, and we strive to be a good neighbor, and it's a lot of what was said there affirms what we believe in and what we're trying to do, and I appreciate the feedback. I'm glad he was able to take advantage of our wonderful campus.
Okay, any other questions by commissioners? Questions, comments that we can address? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing at this point. And I will poll the members of the commission. We would move into deliberation on this case unless any commissioner really objects to that and would prefer that we wait till our next meeting. So before we do that though, Eileen, do I have to leave some time for public comment? Yeah, we're going to wait our new traditional 30 seconds in case there is any public comment from anyone calling in. Okay, we heard no further public comment. So let me ask, is there an objection from any commissioner to moving towards deliberation right now? Seeing none, I'm going to ask for a motion and a second, again, for a conditional use permit for the planned unit areas between the streets of Prospect, Myrtle, Alexander, and Park, and we will use the same method where we first consider the conditional use and then the plan development standards. So can I have a motion and a second to approve? No, it's daunting, but we do need someone to make a motion.
So moved.
Is that Commissioner Uditsky?
Sure.
All right, and a second. Do we have a second? Who? Commissioner Callaway seconds. Thank you. Commissioner Uditsky, let me let you first discuss the conditional use standards and then the plan development standards.
Our first conditional use standard, can everybody hear me okay? Great. The establishment, maintenance, or operation of the conditional use will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health. I think, in fact, in this case, that we're talking about enhancing, public safety, really. I think, as Commissioner Pittman indicated, in particular, in front of the gym, you have some circulation issues. I think, as the applicant indicated, you have some issues with pedestrian crossings and everything. I really think that their plan improves circulation, safety, creates some well-defined pedestrian walkways while giving them the relief, ultimately that they need. So it's not a dramatic increase in the number of spots, and I think the improvements that they're making to the circulation and the lighting and the pedestrian walkway only actually enhances the safety aspect. The second standard, the conditional use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity. I think, given that this property is actually an expansion of the existing parking facility, we're not changing the use. We're not really changing the borders, so to speak. I mean, we're vacating Walter Street to a certain extent, but not necessarily changing use or really impacting the surrounding property, most of which is owned by the university anyway. So I really believe that they've met the second standard as well. The third standard, the establishment of the conditional use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of the surrounding property. I really don't see that that's an issue either. Number one, again, the surrounding property is largely owned by the university. If anything, in terms of development, I think that we would see development from the university for university buildings. So I really don't see that this is an issue, and I think that they've met this standard as well. Number four, adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, and necessary facilities have been or are being provided. I think, again, given that it is an existing parking lot, we're not changing the use. It's been a parking lot for a number of years. We're not really facilities, drainage, et cetera, is not really changing. If anything, I suppose we could be talking about access, given that we are vacating Walter Street. As I had asked, I think that they're anticipating and providing for adequate circulation, through the property to make up for the removal of Walter Street to the north of the parking lot. So, I think that they've ultimately, met that as well in terms of, the stormwater analysis, given, the engineering work that they've done. I think really they're, ultimately enhancing it with the pervious asphalt. And again, we're not changing use, right? It's a parking lot now that is impervious, right? So if anything, with additional trees and landscaping, we likely only enhance the stormwater issue. Number 5, adequate measures being taken to provide ingress and egress, so designed to minimize traffic congestion in the public streets. So when I first looked at this plan, I was actually concerned about this particular standard with traffic and congestion, and hence some of my questions to the applicant. But I think that they've answered that, and really, when you really look at it, I think that the circulation will likely be better. I do think a big part of that is signage, right? And directing the drivers through the lot to make sure that they understand that they can still go north, right? So that whether it's a football game or at the end of the day when all the students are leaving, that everyone isn't trying to, pour onto Alexander Street, which does give me a little bit of concern, given it's such a major crossing for pedestrian traffic for students. But ultimately, I think if there's some adequate signage, and as people get used to using, those north exits, I think in the end it could be better, because I think Park is a better sort of outflow, right, for the traffic than Alexander is. I mean, Alexander is a little bit of a tighter street. You have so much pedestrian traffic going through there. It's really a thoroughfare for a lot of the residential traffic as well, because you've got the library and the park and everything like that on the east, and then you have residential on the west. Park is along the train tracks, and I think people are used to that being a little bit more of a busier sort of street. So I think that as long as there's adequate signage that people know that they can go north, I think that would be an improvement. The proposed conditional use is not contrary to the objectives of the current comprehensive plan for the city of Elmhurst. I don't really see that there's an issue here, and I think they've met this standard as well. I mean, let's face it, this is all part of the university. It's appropriate zoned. The comprehensive plan isn't changing that, there is no plan to have that change. So I think it fits ultimately within the comprehensive plan. And then the last, that the conditional use shall in all other respects conform to the applicable regulations of the district in which it's located. And again, I think they've met that standard, that ultimately, it fits in with the use of the university, with the designation of the property. They're not changing ultimately the use at all. It's remaining parking. So I think that they've met that standard as well.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Callaway, would you have anything you wish to add?
I do not. I think Commissioner Uditsky was very thorough.
I would agree. Commissioner Uditsky, would you then address the plan development standards?
Sure, of course. And I'd probably preface it by saying, along with the case that we just heard, that I think that this is an appropriate use, given the size of the property, its location, for, the planned unit development ordinance. But going through the conditions, so first, obviously, the conditional use permit standards, which we've been through. The city plan development will conform with the general planning policies of the city's official plans. I think I touched on that a little bit already. It's parking, it's within the university, it fits in with the city's comprehensive plan. There's no plan to change that, that area at all. Number 3, public welfare. The plan development will be designed, located, and proposed to be operated and maintained will not impair an adequate supply of light and air to adjacent property and will not substantially increase the danger of fire. So I think Commissioner Snyder spent a lot of time talking about, about lighting, and while that may not be light and air, that may be more geared towards, you know, a 10-unit building or something next to an individual house. I really think that they've met that standard as well, given it is staying a surface parking lot. If it was going to go to a multi-unit deck, you know, perhaps this would be an issue that we discuss further. Section 4, the impact on the public facilities and resources. Plan development shall include the impact contributions to the district, part district, and the city as may be reasonably determined by city council. And maybe I'm, you know, misunderstanding this one, but I don't really think that there is an impact, you know, here from a financial standpoint. It's not like they are doing a brand new development, right, where they're talking about impact fees and whatnot, and increased utilities or use of utilities. Number 5, I think as well is not applicable. It's, you know, I don't know how far back Elmhurst soon to be university goes, right? Likely into the early 1900s or late 1800s. But I don't think this is really applicable, given that it's been a parking lot and a university for so long. So it's been developed property for an adequate period of time. Number 6, parking and traffic. So I addressed this a bit before, and I think that when you really look at this, and if you've really, you know, spent time in that area, as Commissioner Pittman had indicated and Commissioner Snyder, you know, that if you really look at this, and as long as there's adequate signage, and also I think adequate provision for pedestrians, I think is extremely important. But if there's adequate signage and we really push people, you know, and let them know they can go north, I think the circulation will work fine. I do think we need to be cognizant of the pedestrian traffic. I think as it exists currently, and I don't recall which commissioner had indicated this, it's a little bit of a hodgepodge currently, you know, students kind of, you know, and people walking, you know, all through. So I think with some better signage and perhaps, you know, some better striping, as the, you know, the petitioner indicated, you know, we can drive the pedestrian traffic a little bit more to designated thoroughfares. So I do think that they've thought that through really well, and believe ultimately that they've met that standard. Adequate buffering, that in terms of landscaping and public open space, I think they talked a lot about that with the addition of additional trees and landscaping. Certainly public open space, I don't know that it necessarily applies here. It's a very large, you know, parking lot, but if I am not incorrect, I believe there's going to be some additional pedestrian walking area above or where Walter, you know, Avenue is, which I think would be good for pedestrian traffic as well. Number 8, performance. The applicant will demonstrate to the city reasonable assurance that the plan development can be completed according to schedule as designed. I really don't see this, you know, as an issue. Perhaps, if anything, it's just a matter of them managing their schedule, right, to have it done at a time that, you know, doesn't impact student parking or, you know, sports event parking or something. And you know, that's just a matter of construction scheduling. Appearance, number 9, the design of all buildings, structures, and facilities will meet the design-related recommendations of city plans, including the comprehensive plan. Obviously, as we've indicated, you know, it's already in compliance with the, you know, the comprehensive plan, but I think given their design and the addition of additional landscaping, if anything, this is going to be a significant improvement over the existing lot, especially I think as well with the lighting, as we had some extensive discussions over getting some sort of crisp, consistent, you know, natural lighting will help a lot as well, because it currently is a little bit dark, and as the applicant indicated, the, you know, the high pressure sodium is more of a yellow than a natural white light. So I think that'll be an improvement. Lastly, as I've indicated as well, signage. Any proposed sign package will be consistent with the character of the development and incorporated signage in the development in a way that avoids visual clutter. I do think this is a really, really integral and important part of this plan. as I've indicated, right, I think it's important that we're indicating where the pedestrians, should be crossing, right, where they should be making their way through the parking lot, and then ultimately to really direct vehicular traffic through the flow of the parking lot, and making sure that then they're not backing up along Alexander, given that it is such a sort of a pedestrian thoroughfare. So I think with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Rose.
Thank you. Commissioner Callaway, do you have any additional comments you'd like to make?
No, I'll say one thing. I think certainly that Commissioner Uditsky was very thorough. And the only thing, and I'll echo what he said, there are certainly concerns with currently with pedestrian traffic crossing Alexander. So I think this plan is thoughtful in terms of moving the traffic going north out onto Park Avenue, and really trying to not heavily increase the traffic coming out onto Alexander. I would agree signage to encourage people who are exiting, cars that are exiting, to take other exits if they're in that north part of the parking lot would really be key to this plan as well.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from any other commissioner? Commissioner McCoy?
Thank you, Chair Rose. My comment, it really has to do with the traffic on Alexander, and I know Commissioner Uditsky has talked about people being able to go north now on Park. I think the way people get onto the Elmhurst College parking lot depends on the trains. If you're coming on West Avenue and there's a train, you might shoot down to Myrtle and then cut across. And going the opposite direction, the same thing. The train, actually, what's on the train track depends on where people are going. And I know this because I live on Alexander, so I see how much traffic there is going to the college and coming out of the college. There is a huge amount of traffic on Alexander, and you can tell when the college is in session because the traffic increases by a significant amount. I think this is a good plan. This is a good idea for what the college is doing. And I agree with it, but I just want to say that in terms of the traffic, the circulation, what's on the train track, what's going across on the trains makes more sense about where people are going to go, whether they're going to go on Park Avenue to get out and go north, or whether they're going to go on Alexander. I mean, people use Alexander as a cut through anyway, so the traffic on Alexander will increase. I guess one question I didn't ask was, do you anticipate additional students? I mean, I understand you need more parking places, because living around here, I see cars driving around, parking on the side streets and everything. Do you, I guess I forgot to ask, do you anticipate additional students coming to the university?
So we would love to have more students. Unfortunately, the demographics are working against us. There are fewer and fewer 18-year-olds coming down the pipeline. So right now our plan is to just hold steady at our current enrollment, which is going to require us to get a little more aggressive and creative in our recruitment, given the tight supply out there. But no, we don't anticipate that our overall enrollment will expand. We're hoping to hold it steady.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's correct. All that we've heard is that for many institutions of higher learning, they're really expecting a constriction just on the demographics, that there's fewer and fewer, it's a smaller number of 18 to 20-year-olds or so who are being really coming of age to go to university. So that's going to be a difficulty. So I want to add one thing really in terms of the PUD standards, which is appearance. I'm really impressed that the college, soon to be university, is going to be adding 75 trees. Some of those, is my understanding, is within the parking lot. So I just applaud them for that. So when we think about appearance and standards and how this sea of asphalt sometimes will fit into the city of Elmhurst, where we pride ourselves for our trees and greenery. I just want to applaud the college for doing that. It's just, it really is kind of counter neighborhood to not do that, to just have this sea of asphalt. So I really, I think that they absolutely meet the ninth standard for the plan development by adding that many trees in the parking lot, and I just applaud them for that. So thanks. Other comments or questions? Commissioner Hoffman.
Thanks, Chair Rose. I just wanted to echo your comments. I mean, a huge improvement to the existing site with the addition of the landscaping. I also want to make just a general comment regarding parking. It's a topic that's near and dear to me based on what I do every day. And I know there's an actual need for parking and an effective need for parking. And in a lot that's this large, to expect people to circulate to try and find a space is challenging. It's even more challenging when oftentimes you're asking them to circulate outside of the lot onto existing thoroughfares and into other parking lots. So I think this is a huge improvement and will benefit the community at large. I want to echo my fellow commissioners and the public comments. I think Elmhurst College and soon to be Elmhurst University is a huge asset to our community. I too use it regularly and very much look forward to these improvements. Thank you.
With all of us commissioners using the college, the parking is certainly warranted, don't you think? So, okay, any other comments? All right, seeing none, and we are in deliberation, then I think I will ask City Planner Eileen Franz to please call the roll.
Thank you. The motion to approve the plan unit development for the expanded and reconfigured parking lot was made by Commissioner Uditsky and seconded by Commissioner Callaway. So Commissioner Uditsky?
Yes.
Commissioner Callaway?
Yes.
Commissioner Burns?
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman?
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy?
Yes.
Commissioner Pittman?
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder?
Yes.
Chair Rose?
Yes. Thank you very much, everyone. And we wish you the college where they're already gone. They're already left. No, they aren't. They're there. Wish you the best of luck in that. Hopefully it will go to DPZ on the 7th.
The DPZ is actually not until the of July.
Okay. Hopefully we'll go at that point. So look forward to it. And you are very wise in doing this construction when students aren't there. So, and hopefully we'll have a different and even better world by the time you start construction. So great. So good luck. Okay. We're going to move along to the next item of business, which is it's a case 20 P08, City of Elmhurst text amendment. Eileen, are you taking this one? Okay.
Thank you, Chair Rose. This next case is 20 P08. It is a text amendment by the City of Elmhurst to amend the text of the Elmhurst zoning ordinance to provide additional language in the definition of lot line front to address consolidated corner lots and original lots of record and such other zoning ordinance changes consistent with and to conform with the proposed amendments. The application was filed May 7th, 2020. The legal notice was published May 14th, 2020. And this was also originally scheduled for, this was actually originally scheduled for June 2nd, our meeting that was canceled. So continued to June 16th and then continued to this evening, June 23rd. I actually have a very brief PowerPoint. Chair Rose, if you could maybe share my screen for a moment. Thank you.
We'll do that right now.
Thank you. So right up here on the screen is our definition of lot line front. And that is, oh, okay. I am out of the meeting. Wait, no, I'm not. Okay, sorry. Bear with me a second here. Okay. Is it gone? There it is. Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that. So what this first image on the screen, it's our definition of lot line front, which is the boundary of a lot, which is along an existing or dedicated public street, or where no public street exists, is along a public way. On a cornered lot, the front lot line shall be the shortest lot line on a public right-of-way. So you can see here is an example of a corner lot, and this is what would be the front yard, and this longer line here would be what we call the corner side yard. And some of the commissioners who were on the commission last year might recall we had a case where we had a family who had an interior lot, right, like this, and then they purchased a corner lot, and they needed to come through a zoning process because of the size of their lot caused their front lot line to change to what had formerly been a corner lot. And I'm going to show you another so right here is just an example of a couple streets in Elmhurst. Right now, the two, sorry, I don't have it's tough without a pointer here. You can see there's two lots, one that has the 84 in front of it. It would be like at the top left of the screen, and one with 80. So right now, the lot identified by the dash 001, the front yard would be that 84-foot lot line, and their corner side yard would be 100 feet. And for the lot to the south of them, ending in 002, the front lot line would be the lot line with 80 feet. If that lot was consolidated, the front lot line would then change to the northern lot line that is 100 feet, and the two, the 84 and the 80 would become the corner side. And why this comes into play is we have a greater required setback for a front yard than we do for a corner side yard. So in a situation like this, right now, each of the 001 and the 002 would, the homes would need to be 30 feet from that western lot line if a property is zoned R1. And if this lot was consolidated, the setback would change from 30 feet to 15 feet, which could impact the visual, it could impact the 007 lot. So we've had this come up again. We actually have a variation coming before you, most likely at the next meeting. We have another situation where this has come up again, where we have someone who had an interior lot and purchased a corner lot. And due to the configuration, due to the consolidation, the front lot line is going to change to what was formerly a corner side yard. And this is just an example. I mean, this isn't necessarily to scale, but just showing you how, you know, you can see on the 007 lot a very faint, block of where the house is. And you can see a very faint block underneath the blue square. And it's, you know, it's already, these lots are a little unique where there's not a lot of depth on those two, but you can see how much more a house potentially could go in front of another one if it was to switch to a corner side yard. So the recommendation is to keep that definition as it is, but add a sentence saying, except in the event that a residentially zoned interior lot is consolidated through a plat of consolidation recorded in DuPage County with an adjacent corner lot in the same zoning district, the designated front lot line will not change. And the rationale for this really is to kind of protect the neighborhood and not impact a property owner who, you know, has been lined up with their neighbor as far as front yards go, not to have that change potentially by, you know, more than half with a new setback. Whereas the property line that is currently the corner side, you know, the neighbor adjacent on that particular lot line has already been impacted by a setback, and in a lot of cases it may be a corner side adjacent to a corner side. I know it's sort of a confusing topic, and I completely understand if anyone has any questions or concerns or wants us to, you know, take any additional look at any particular areas, but I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Eileen. Questions from commissioners? Commissioner Callaway.
Eileen, could you go back to that diagram where you had those lots? I may or may not have a question, but I just want to see. Okay. And this may be a really silly question, but looking at the lot that says 100.664, would you ever have a situation where that corner lot would be narrower? And so currently then the narrower end would be on the north, and that would be the front of the property, but the adjacent interior would have its front where it says 80 here. Do you see what I'm saying? My only concern is that the if you did have two lots like that, the amendment wouldn't really cover the situation because the front lots of those two properties wouldn't be on the same side.
Standing. So you're saying if this wasn't 100, if it was a smaller number? Okay, so in that case,
less than 84, I guess I would say.
Okay, so that this would be, so if this was the front and then this would be the corner side. So, I mean, yes, in that case, I do think, I mean, that would then change it for the people on this end of it potentially.
Can you go back to the language for a minute?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that if in fact that could be a situation, I think this language might need to change. and maybe it's as easy, I don't know if it's just saying the designated front lot line of the larger property, or I'm not quite sure how to say it, but I don't know that this would cover that kind of a situation.
Can I jump in for a second?
Commissioner Burns? Sure.
If I understand Commissioner Callaway, what you're saying is prior to consolidation, the 001 lot, if it was less than 84 feet on its north line, right, 001 would have its front yard the same as 003 and 004. But the 80-foot lot, 002, would have its front yard the same as 007 and 008. Therefore, the front yards of 001 and 002 would not be lined up in the same directions. So in the language saying the lot line would not change, the question would be still left, which front lot line would not change?
Correct. Yeah, because you don't, the language presumes that the front of those properties are lined up, and they wouldn't be in that situation.
Right.
I'm going to ask you, Eileen, how many of these cases do we have? I'm just curious, potentially, how many of these do we have?
In Church. Okay. We had that one last year. I believe it was the corner of Arlington and Church. I could be incorrect. We have one coming up on our next agenda. And we did go through, we did not survey every, block in the city, but we did take a look at the map, and we did come up with a few other situations where it could potentially occur, but I don't have an exact number for you.
I have one further question, which is what is the advantage of handling this by changing the text versus handling these potential things, which do need to be handled by the variance procedure? What is the advantage you see of our just changing the text?
We were hoping to just simplify the process for people and not have them have to go through the variation process, but it certainly is something that could still be done through a variation process. They are unique situations.
Other questions or comments for smaller thumbnails? So you have to use your voice or raise your hand. Commissioner Callaway?
Yeah, I leave it to me to, find a loophole here, but that's what I do all day long. So, it's this simple as not. It's the idea is we now have two consolidated properties that previously had potentially two different front lots, designated front lots. Can this be done by simply altering the language to say that the designated front lot line shall be the previously largest or longest front lot line of the properties prior to the consolidation? So in that situation, even though, as we were looking at it, that property on the north was a shorter lot line, with some sort of an alteration like that, it would automatically, because the lot line of the interior lot that's on the west facing would automatically then be the front yard, because that was the larger, that was the longest front yard previously. I'm sure there's a less cumbersome way to say it, but that might simplify it.
Yeah, I see where you're going with that. some way to mold this language so that it really meets the uniqueness of it, but it doesn't require people to engage in variation process. So, Eileen, do you have thoughts on that?
I think that is something that we could maybe take a look at. I would like to maybe talk it through with Emily and Mike and look at it a little closer, if that would be okay.
Can I suggest then that we continue this
Sure.
to a later meeting? Would that be, would anyone on the commission, I think that makes some sense for us to do that. So why don't we do that, to continue that?
Chair Rose,
Yes,
can I make a comment, please?
yes, you can. Oh, you're in
I think we'll go back to the picture of the lots, please. The scenario that we're speaking here will be very difficult to come by. I think if we survey all lots in Elmhurst to have where this will be a front yard, this will be a front yard with a configuration like this. What you'll see that is if you would look over at the far right of that picture, the 004 and 007. I mean, that's what you're talking about, right? Where there's two front yards. So if you looked at the right of it, 004 and 007, let's say 007's front yard was to the right of the picture. Like that was the other corner. Like 004 and 007 were a corner. 004 is a corner, not just an interior lot. That would be very difficult to come about where someone's going to develop something with a lot of that nature. The lot that we're talking about on the 84 and the 100 and the 80, that'd be a hard configuration to find, I think, where the lots are similar in depth but different in the frontage. One suggestion possibly is, because I think that's going to be very infrequent, is that what if we change the language to say that when an interior lot is consolidated with a corner lot where both are a front yard on the same right of way, right? And so when it happens, the scenario we're talking about where there's one that's a front yard on both the corner and the other side, it's going to happen very seldom, is my guess, based on the survey we did of all the lots. But the most common scenario, which we're going to see in the next case, and we saw in Arlington, and part of the reason we're doing this is really when the applicant comes in and says, really, my house is existing right now. All I want to do is put an addition on my house. I want to put a garage in the back. I'm going to have to go through this process. We said yes because your lot line changed and not you consolidate. And we were just looking at a way to say, to put them through that process. We can always do that if that's what the commission feels that it's the thing to do. But we're just trying to look at a way to ease the burden on the resident when they're really not changing. On both those cases, the interior lot, the house is already existing. They just consolidate with the corner lot. So if there's a way to say to keep two front yards that are on opposite streets, what if it's when two streets and interior lots consolidate with a corner lot that both have a frontage on a common right of way? The frontage doesn't change.
And I appreciate that. And I think that what we're saying is there some way to modify this language so that it does take that into account? And what you're suggesting, I guess we're saying, can you guys go back to the drawing board and look at that suggestion you're making? Can that modify the language so that it still has the intent of not putting people through the variation process?
Right. So if something's like the 004, 07, is that we're talking two frontages, that would have to come for variation.
Right.
But if they both have the same frontage on the same right of way,
Right.
that would not have to be. The front yard doesn't change.
Commissioner Callaway.
Yeah, that was the point I was just going to clarify, because Mike, you're right. I mean, that situation where you would have 007 and 004 is probably a very, very rare situation. If we can, the language that you suggested, I think something similar to that sounds good. But that way, then we've got the text amendment, and the variation would only be required in that odd situation that we have with 004 and 007.
Okay, we'll bring it back.
Yeah, if you'll bring it back. Commissioner Burns, did you have a question, or are you fine with them taking it back and bringing it back to us?
I just wanted to say, I think Mike's suggested language makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you guys can just go back, recraft that language, bring it back, and I think that that makes some sense. Eileen?
I think Commissioner Snyder had her hand raised as well. I still have the screen. I'm going to give it back to you.
Oh, you don't, right. Can you give me that?
Yeah, I'll give you back the screen.
Okay.
My
Mr.
concern was
Snyder.
covered. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Snyder.
No, my concern was covered. Thank you.
Oh, okay. I still don't have it back.
Okay.
Anyone else? All right, let's ask them to bring that back to us. And I think, I think we all have an idea where we want that to go. Just have them modify the language. I think it should be fairly quick for us to consider when it comes up. So if that's acceptable to everybody, I think that's what we'll do. So, okay, that's the end of our agenda, except for, I love the way this looks, any other business before the committee? Any other business anyone has that they wish to raise before the commission? Okay. The only one I have is our scheduling. Eileen, can you just do a brief report for us about scheduling, and that would encourage people to get to Eileen about your own personal vacation schedules. Hopefully we're all not going to be spending our vacations in front of screens, although that may be possible this year. Maybe what we all may be doing, putting a big picture of Hawaii on our screens. So, but can you please talk about the schedule for the summer for us?
Our next meeting is scheduled for July 7th. We have 4 cases scheduled for that evening. And then we also have cases scheduled for July 21st. And we don't have anything scheduled for August yet, but I'm aware of a few different applicants who are planning to file here fairly soon to get on the agenda. The cases for July 7th, I believe most of the information for those cases has been posted to board docs. The staff reports aren't complete yet or anything, but their applications and some of the additional information they've submitted has been posted already for July 7th. And we're just getting the publications in order for the July 21st meeting. We're going to have a few text amendments coming forward. One of them is related to the mayor's executive order and some of the changes that were made for temporary use in event permits and pickup windows that have been allowed through the executive order. And we need to possibly extend those beyond the executive order through phase 5. So that's something that'll be coming forward July 21st. But we have a request from Delta Sonic for a pretty big expansion at their property, and that's scheduled for July 7th. So that's up on board docs. In that evening, we have a couple residential variations and a proposal for some townhomes over on Addison, right across from CVS. And then the text amendments are scheduled for that July 21st meeting, along with some other residential cases. So I do have the zoning case schedule. I will get that out to you. I've been meaning to do that. We've just had a lot of changes with our June meeting dates. So it seemed like every time I was getting ready to send it, I knew it was going to change again very, very soon. So I'll try and get that out to you here in the next couple days. But we definitely have some heavy agendas moving forward. So thank you for this additional meeting this month. It really helped us out to get some of these cases kind of moving forward again.
Well, I'm muting you, Eileen. These are our plan that we would always like, which is to have one meeting per month in the summer. We're not going to be able to do that, partially because we had so many meetings canceled. We did not meet really after the March 3rd meeting. We didn't meet again until May, whatever it was. So that's one of the reasons. So we're not going to be able to do that. We still, if possible, if we can contain it to one meeting in the month of August, I'll try for that. What would be helpful would be to hear from commissioners. It would be either at the beginning of the month or near the end of the month. We would do it that way, but that's one of the reasons we're not being able to do it. Commissioner Pittman?
I just had a question about the meetings in general, and are we anticipating doing the meetings remote for the next couple of months, or is there a conversation being had about that? That was it.
That was my next item of business, is to find out about that. So you anticipated that. So Eileen, what is the thinking at this point about it? It's possible for us to meet on July 7th here. We were discussing that right before the meeting. Eileen and I would do that because we are a smaller group. It would be every other chair here. It could be done. And Eileen, do you want to make some comments, or Mike, do you want to make some comments on that as well?
Sure. What our plan right now is we would like to follow what the city council chooses to do, which we don't know the answer to that yet. But based on phase 4 going to effect this Friday, we could start holding meetings here again, because there's up to 50 people now in one location. And we very seldom have more than 50 people at any city council meeting or a meeting here. And if we did, we could separate them where we put people in the room I'm in right now. You know, we could YouTube live the meetings, so people can watch it in here, and they can do public comment and whatnot. So I talked to the city manager about it today. Him and the mayor are discussing how they want to plan moving forward with the city council. But technically, once phase 4 goes into effect on Friday, we could start having regular meetings again.
Yeah, I think that's something I know they would like to do. So we may not have really the answer for that, Melissa. We were just immediately, but I suspect that very quickly, maybe it will be the July 7 meeting, but it may not be until the July 21st meeting where commissioners will all be invited back into here. But I just want to tell you personally, I think that we have to make sure that we all understand the guidelines, that they're clear, that all commissioners feel safe in following those guidelines, feel confident that the city is following those guidelines before we would move into that. So I think that's, I say that personally, and I also think for everybody that we have to have some confidence that we've got good guidelines in place and we are following them, and that everyone is comfortable with doing that. And that's kind of where we'll be. So, you know, I work at a university, and they have said, you know, they plan to open classes in the fall, but if you're a professor and you don't feel comfortable teaching face-to-face, you can negotiate to do it online. So I don't know. You know, I would love to see us get back to meeting all in person, but I also do not think we should do that precipitously, and we should really be thoughtful about how we're doing that. Any other, thank you. Any other thoughts or comments or that anyone wants to make about that? Mr. Pittman.
Yeah, I guess I didn't ask because I was in a rush to get back, and I'm glad to hear that obviously there's a lot of thought going into it. One of the reasons I ask is that my husband did go back into his office this week, and he had described how cumbersome it was in terms of the wearing masks and the interacting with people. So as much as I would like to be back in person too, I think if we're all in a room and wearing masks and taking them off every time we have to talk and that sort of thing, it might be more efficient to continue doing them at home.
That's a good point. I mean, I think there's a lot of things to really to consider in this. You know, you get used to doing it this way, and it's like, oh, now we're going to make another change and do it the other way, because the reality is we're not going to be doing it the way we did it on March 3rd. I don't know how we're going to do it, but I know that we will not do it the way that it was done on March 3rd. So it's not like we're going back to what we were doing. We would be moving into a different phase. And we all have to understand that phase and make good decisions. City staff has to make good decisions. We all make good decisions on how that will occur. So at this point, I'll just tell you, we're all thinking about it. And there's no hard and fast decision made. And I personally think you all should feel good about that we don't have any hard and fast decision made right now. But we are, clearly we're probably going to move somewhere in that direction. And, and so just keep a meter on your anxiety. Let's see how well it goes as we move along. So any other questions or comments? So really a big shout out to Kevin Burns and to Jordan Uditsky for taking the lead on these PUD cases. I'll just say, stand back and think we've had 4 or 5 PUDs now. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of them. That's astounding. So really a shout out to both of you for doing that. They're complicated because of the procedures we have to go through. But fortunately, the cases were not all that complicated. But I really thanks for those of you who have taken the lead in the discussion on the PUD. So hopefully we'll get back to just some nice old variations, what I wouldn't give for a fence variation now. So, all right. Seeing nothing else, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved, Commissioner Uditsky, and a second, Commissioner Pittman. We have to call the roll.
Commissioner Uditsky,
Yes.
Commissioner Pittman,
Yes.
Commissioner Burns,
Yes.
Commissioner Callaway,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman,
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy,
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder,
Yes.
Chair Rose.
Yes. Thanks to all of you for your patience. All right.
Thank you.
See you on the 7th.